Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and unless I'm much mistaken, this is number 237 of Sounding the Jolly Old Shallows.
And it's also a new year, 2025. I don't know what you think, Adrian, but I didn't think when I looked through the curtains on the morning of 2025, it looked very different from 2024. It was raining, incredibly windy, and very, very cold, and pretty horrid, really.
Can you hear the little birds singing on the wall? For those who can't hear it, we have a new, not a cuckoo clock. I know we told you about it last week, but it's so nice, this little twittering sound. I don't know, ridiculous. No, it wasn't. I don't think the weather had made any attempt at all to make any resolutions for this year. Maybe it will change, but it's been a bit bleak, hasn't it?
Well, especially, of course, for some people in some parts of the UK. I mean, I know that people travel from all over the world to be in Edinburgh, and everything was cancelled there. And the amount of flooding and the amount of despair that some people have had to face, it's been a bit overwhelming, really.
Nevertheless, on New Year's Day, we decided we were going out, and we had two fixed objectives.
One was slightly more honourable than the other, really.
One was to go to the
Ripon.
cathedral in Ripon Cathedral, which we'll say more of in a moment, and the other, and perhaps more importantly at that moment, was we didn't have any breakfast because we said there's bound to be somewhere open that does breakfast on New Year's Day morning. And we looked some up, didn't we? And they all said they were open.
They all said they were open, but they were closed.
When we didn't even get to them. We got to one, and we could have killed somebody in there. It was all dark and lightless, and I wanted a bacon sandwich. Anyway, we pushed on to Ripon, and Ripon looked shut, if I may put it like that. But then something happened.
Well, there was a cafe open, and it wasn't just open. You know, to be greeted at the door by "Come in, it's so cold out there, just get yourselves in here."
And bring the dog.
Lovely.
Don't worry about the dog.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that was our first treat, but the second...
But can I just say
sorry.
the sheer joy of that, but if you've not experienced it, it's just beyond anything else. I mean, that you're freezing, you're hungry, and there's a great big place with lights on serving breakfast, and somebody who wants you to come, or appears to want you, is professionally obliged to want you to come in. No, he was very nice. So it was fantastic, that.
It was so welcoming. And then we went to the cathedral, and I have to say, if you haven't been to Ripon Cathedral, it is the sweetest place. I mean, it is majestic, it is beautiful, but it is so welcoming and so friendly, and when you're in there you feel so comfortable somehow, and so as though somebody would like you to be there, I suppose. A bit like the cafe, only a bit different.
It's quite interesting, really. The lady who was kind of looking after people in there, there's a lady dressed in whatever they dress in just inside the door, and she said, "We're not York and we're not Durham." And of course York and Durham are two of the, I think Betjeman said Durham was the most beautiful building in Europe, something like that, and York is spectacular if you can get in there, which I think you can now, actually. I'm always thinking of disabled people now. I think you can get in there now. But the thing about Ripon is that it's a very humble but warm. Actually, it was a bit warm in terms of temperature, which was amazing.
It was quite
when you think of the
helpful.
size of the building. But it's a place that we find very warming anyway. And we've often gone there for particular reasons, haven't we?
Well, I think, you know, you talk about trysting places, and I know we have somebody we know well for whom it's her local woods, which is the place where she feels most comfortable and most able to meet with God. And I know there aren't special places. Well, I'm not sure there are anyway, but there's something about Ripon where we have tried to reset sometimes our lives. We've been there when we didn't know where to move, and we've been there sometimes when we've been worried out of our minds about something. And there's something that holds us there. And so we thought, well, this year we'll just think about 2025 And I'm not sure we really did think about it exactly, but we just sat there feeling, well, how would you describe it?
I don't know. I mean, to start with, like all good Anglicans, which I don't know if we're good Anglicans, but like all Anglicans, we headed for the 2 seats where we always sit, even though there was nobody else in there. I mean, it was just...
We don't even go to an Anglican church,
well,
Adrian.
Well, we kind of... we are one of the things that hang off the Anglican church. Anyway,
horrible.
These two chairs are on the end of the front row, on the right as you face the altar. And, well, obviously we'd have sat somewhere else, but there is something not obligatory but comfortable about that. And from there you can see right through into the nave. And it's truly beautiful place to be.
And as always, it's the slightly... If you just sit and wait and watch, there's always something else, isn't there? And this time, because there was a lovely crib, I mean, I think quite old, bearing in mind that some of the figures, and they're clearly plaster figures, are a bit chipped round the edges. I thought Joseph was looking a little tired.
Yes,
but
don't blame him.
no, but suddenly, under the altar appeared a very small person. I think he was probably about 2+, wouldn't you, judging from his size?
About 2, yeah.
And he crawled to the side of this crib and then peered through the side and looked as though if his mum hadn't turned up, he'd have quite liked to go in there and sit next to the baby Jesus. He certainly stroked the donkey, and he was so comfortable with the whole thing.
What Bridget didn't know was that I'd already had a conversation, a brief one, with his mother, because I'd gone off to walk down the right-hand side, and I came across both of them, with the little boy saying, "Where's Daddy? I want to see Daddy. Can we go and see Daddy?" And the mother looked up at me, so I think slightly embarrassed, thinking, it was some massive thing about divorce or separation or something. And she said, "Oh, he's over there at the end of the cathedral or something." So when they appeared, there was the mother and the child, and the father, who didn't look up from his phone from that moment until they left the building. Now, I don't know of any significance of that, but I was completely absorbed by, because when you write things a lot, you're always thinking about situations where anything could be the case, and it could be the case that there was nothing at all about that. But I just for a few moments I was interested in that situation.
Well, obviously I didn't see that, but I did. I was absorbed by this little boy, and it reminded me, and I'm not even going to try and make a great link with this, except that we're talking about a cathedral, and we're talking about children. So I'm just going to read something that you wrote ages ago, Adrian, and this was about Winchester, which I have to say...
It was about Winchester Cathedral.
Cathedral, and I have to say, of all the cathedrals in the world, probably Winchester. Just say why Winchester is so important to you.
I suppose it's partly because I had to do a thing for the BBC once, which was a short story on the radio, and in order to do it, I had to go and find stuff that might go into that, and I went to Winchester Cathedral. And for once, instead of looking at 2.5 things and one gravestone, and I actually really looked at it. I looked at where the candles were. I looked at there's some very good sculptures there. As you go in the west door, in the far distance, there is the most extraordinarily beautiful blue stained glass window, and there is a feeling about the place that is alive. Is the only way I can put it. So. Yeah, but
and the window, which is what I was thinking about, meant so much to you.
Yeah, they interestingly, the thing I did pick up there was that the window at the west end, that is, as you come in through the west door and you turn left and you look back, this window looked like a jigsaw puzzle. And the reason it looked like a jigsaw puzzle is because it was a jigsaw puzzle. Because many, many years ago, Cromwell's men came and smashed that window. and it was in splinters. And I gather that the local people decided they were not going to lose their window, and they decided to put the thing together again somehow, and they would put it back up in the cathedral when the right time came. And they did their very best. They collected all the pieces, and they tried very hard to work out how to produce something that looked like the original picture. And they failed, but in a sense they succeeded, because instead of simply giving up, they put them back in the places where they've been, but in a totally jumbled state. So when you look up at it now, it's almost impossible to know what the original picture was. And it's intrigued me ever since then. My great hope is that there'll be a small kiosk just inside the gates of heaven, if such things exist. And there'll be one of those angels who says, what is it they say on that comedy program when they can't do something? Says, computer says no. Now, I want to say to that angel, that window in the cathedral in Winchester, tell me that picture, tell me what it was. And I hope that angel will then say, yes, it's just over here. And I will be so pleased to finally see what that jigsaw puzzle is capable of making. So all sorts of reasons why.
But you see, what I love about that as well, Adrian, is that you go to a cathedral and you think, let's look at the choir stalls, let's look at the stained glass windows, let's look at the beauty. And there was all that. There really was. Beautiful banners, lovely statues, everything about it was beautiful. But just like with that window that's made up of all sorts of bits and pieces, we were equally enjoying just seeing the people there. Yeah, like you said, this little family. Yeah. What was going on in them? Because on that day, they were part of the cathedral. And that's why I love your poem, and I am just going to read it.
This is about a different trip to the cathedral, visit to the cathedral. It was quite a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. This was written a long time ago. I wept in Winchester Cathedral once. It was a winter afternoon after speaking at a lunch in town. There was an hour to fill before my train was due to leave, and yet again the beauty of that ancient building drew me like a child into its echoing embrace. I knew it would. I have such scant resistance to cathedrals, and particularly this one. Well, this time I did two things. First of all, the lighting of a candle for my father, just because I wanted to. Theology is very thin sometimes. A candle's flame is fat and rich with mystery. And the second thing was climbing to the balcony. They let you do that now, and as I stood there, leaning on the rail, feeling warm at last, and looking down, my heart went out to this old slumberous house of worship. Built for God, its stonework soaked with centuries of prayer, tears and passions of belief and doubt flowing from a million souls. How can you tolerate these days, I softly asked, the whispering obeisance of the secular patrols? And then, quite suddenly, the children came. 100 juniors or more. They sounded like a flock of seagulls, looked like litter blown in by an enterprising gust of wind. They flung their coats down anywhere, and then, armed with crayons, paper, pens, and question sheets, they looked and listened, wrote and chattered, rubbed and roamed, with no respect at all for silly, solemn things. The place was full of them, their virtues and their sins. And the building seemed to wake and blink and shake itself and smile and draw itself to its full height with pleasurable pride on finding all those children working, laughing, living, unequivocally being there. And that was when I cried, because I saw and felt inside the truth we once received long ago, before there were cathedrals that such as these unreligious children, with their earnestness and their busyness, their unself-conscious cries, form the best of congregations, for they simply are beloved, much against the will of serious disciples, by the only one who ever recognized, like photographs of home, the kingdom in their eyes. And I thought of that again, Adrian, when it said in your line where you said against the will of serious disciples, because you met a man outside the cathedral, didn't you, just as we were leaving, which also had an impact on us.
I do enjoy brief conversations with people, and you never know where they're going to go. This was a very simple one, but he had a dog with him.
A beautiful dog.
A really lovely, friendly dog. And I said, as I always say, is he friendly or she friendly? And he said, fine, yeah, he'd be like to be stroked. So I said hello to the dog, and I said, why are you waiting for out here? And he said, oh, my partner's able to go in, but dogs aren't allowed in the cathedral. And we having a dog, we live our lives looking at what's available for dogs to go into or not. We had one amazing realization, didn't we, a while ago, about the most famous writer about animals in the world, probably James Herriot.
Oh yes, we were in Thirsk and we went to World of James Herriot, and no dogs were allowed, and we actually did feel that was quite an irony, didn't we, really, that seeing as how he spent his whole life looking after animals, that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't mind the dogs being in there, but never mind.
Anyway, so he said, so I can't go in. He said, I don't understand why. And he said, I'm not a believer of any sort, but I'd just like to go in with the dog, and I love looking round. I love looking at the inside of the cathedral. And he said, I said, maybe you should ask. And he said, maybe I will. Maybe I'll go in and just say, why is my dog not allowed in? And I don't know if he did or not. And just as I went, he said, well, I'm not sure if I will. But it left me with an odd feeling that there's all the ways in which places and people manage to find ways to prevent people from having access to the thing that might change their lives. I'm not saying going into the cathedral would have changed his life.
No, and I mean, I do understand about dogs. I mean, we go into dog-friendly cafes, and sometimes there are several dogs in there who haven't read the notice that they're supposed to be friendly with each other. So I do understand it, and I do know that if you've got a dog cocking its leg against some beautiful thing that is of beauty and special and for some people totally sacred, I understand there's a problem. But it's not just that, is it? It's so often mean little... She was lovely, the person who welcomed us into the cathedral. I absolutely no doubt about the fact that she would have been really kind to this man, and a rule is a rule, etc., etc. But sometimes we maybe need to look all the time to what it is that is stopping somebody from just twiddling around the edge of what we believe and what is important to us.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because if somewhere is too smart, too beautiful, too likely to be made ugly and awful by something like a dog weeing or something, I can't quite work that equation out in my head.
It is, though, one of the reasons that I loved the recording that we watched of the Together at Christmas service in Westminster Abbey. And I know there'll be a lot of people who won't have seen that. But if you get the chance even to just look at some of it, the idea was it was all about kindness. And outside Westminster Abbey there was a kindness tree where people could write on cards, and the messages were to people who had just shown kindness. And I know one of them I read was my mum, just my mum, always the kindest person I knew. But it was just an opportunity to make that the focus. Because as soon as you put your talents round love came down at Christmas, it becomes something separate. When you start from grace being the undeserved kindness of God, the whole perspective changes, doesn't it? And one of my favourite things within that, if you get the chance to see it, is there's a gorgeous choir. There's a nursery, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly where it is, but where the idea is to have a nursery for children that also combines with people who are really quite elderly. It works so well.
Yeah, there was a film of them together, wasn't
yes.
there?
And they were one of the choirs. You know, there were professional singers.
That's right, yeah.
There was beautiful ballet. There was wonderful music and amazing choir, the Westminster Abbey Choir. But there was this choir as well.
They sang the first verse of a carol, didn't they? And then everyone joined in after that. But in a way, it was the same thing, that the choir wasn't the greatest choir in the world, but looking at those faces and listening to the joy and the energy that went into that was fantastic.
And the fact they felt so special.
They felt right. It's the right to be
the
there.
right place.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think actually we have started the new year, despite our normal grumblings and all the rest of it, with a feeling that maybe that's where we have to look for the things that are real and the things that are kind and the things that make you enjoy watching them, like watching this little boy trying to crawl through the side of this ancient crib to get in among the donkey and the shepherd. And
I'm sure people have got bored with hearing me say it, but I think kindness is probably one of the most powerful things I know.
Yes. Well, here we go. 2025. Amazing. It marks 55 years of us being married, and I'm sure has all sorts of significances for all sorts of people.
We haven't got to August yet. We haven't actually reached our
we've got to get there.
Anniversary yet. Who knows what could happen before then?
As always, be lovely to hear from you. Maybe things that you thought about the beginning of this year.
See you next time.